Welcome to the One Advantage podcast, exploring the intersections of pure power, culture, and agility. Your hosts, Jason Richmond, Mike Richardson, and Leo Butari, co-founders of the One Advantage community of practice and advantage peer groups. For more information, please visit us at idealoutcomesinc.com.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the One Advantage podcast. We've got me and Jason today. I have no idea where Leo Batari is, but the best of the best are here. Jason, you and me, we've got a great topic today, everybody. The power of prioritizing people. Recent research by Gartner shows that 82% of employees say it's important for their organization to see them as a person, not just an employee. That's a novel thought right there. Leaders who demonstrate authenticity, flexibility, and gratitude are taking big steps towards meeting this goal. When people, including employees, customers, and vendors, feel valued and respected, it fosters an environment of trust, collaboration, and innovation. We're going to have a spectacular conversation about that. Nobody better than Jason to have that conversation with. But before we do that, let's find out where you've been, Jason. And I can see from your video backdrop that you are back in the Caribbean, your place in St. Thomas. Where else have you been, Jason?
Yes, well, I missed the last couple podcasts, and clients have been taking me everywhere. Last week, the last time we did this, I was up in Calgary. I've been spending a lot of time in Chicago. I've been spending some time in New York, Philadelphia. Last couple 3 weeks, Mike, I have been coast to coast and found myself spending a little time in Southern California. And now through the 4th of July, I will be in the U.S. Virgin Islands.
Nice. Excellent. I'm jealous, everybody. What a great location to be in through the July 4th week here in the States, everybody. That will just be fabulous. I just got back late last night, Jason, from a quick trip up to Seattle to do a speaking session with a client. Had about 30 of their leaders there. And of course, we talked about agility. We talked about collective intelligence. We talked about artificial intelligence. And we talked about our topic today of the power of prioritizing people and how can we show up as a better leader to do all of that. Nobody better than Jason to talk to about all of this, everybody, because his whole thing is about leadership and communication and culture and all of that good stuff. Where do you want to start, Jason? When you think about the power of prioritizing people, what kinds of things do you think about?
Well, first of all, Mike, and this just last Saturday, we were doing a leadership program with a public utilities company, and the topic of generations and working with different generations came up, and it really put some thought in my mind that there are some definite generational differences in working with different generations and collaborating differently with generations in the workforce. But this particular topic is relevant regardless of what generation you're in.
Yeah.
Right?
Everybody wants to feel valued. Everybody wants to feel cared for. Everybody wants to feel developed, regardless of whether they're in their 20s, their 30s, their 40s, their 50s. Heck, even these days, their 60s or their 70s.
Yes.
Maybe even their 80s.
Yes. And I mean, this topic is relevant for the entire workforce, the entire community, the entire organization, regardless of culture, diversity, where you come from, what generation you're in. And, it takes me way back, probably, I bet you this is 25 years ago, early on in my career working with my business coach, and his name was Bob Pink. And I was having a conversation with Bob in my office, and I'll never forget this. This was in Kansas City, Missouri. And I asked Bob, I said, what makes the difference? I mean, what's the silver bullet? What separates high performing leaders and mid-level performance? And he looked at me and he said, Jason, he says, it is the insatiable appetite of curiosity. And you think about that. What does that really mean, to have an insatiable appetite of curiosity? The way I took it and what that meant to me is that to be in any type of leadership or influencing role, you have to live in other people's interests 100% of the time and not your own. And living in other people's interests is really the kingpin of prioritizing people.
Yeah.
Being interested in them versus yourself. And for me, in the foundation of prioritizing people, that's where it begins. Having an insatiable appetite of curiosity towards others and living and breathing and acting in their interests, not your own.
I love that. I love the word insatiable as well, everybody. Of course, what that means is a thirst you can't quench, a hunger you can't fully feed, a relentless commitment, forever, unending, to the power of prioritizing people and being curious about what their hopes and what their dreams are, and helping align things such that you can help them achieve those things, not just in business, professionally, personally, but also in life. That's fantastic, Jason.
Yeah, and this type of topic in leadership realms and that type of thing, there's a lot of mental subconscious blind spots involved in the prioritization of people. Some leaders feel like they do it very well, but subconsciously they could be doing it so much better. I mean, the topic of really putting effort and interest in prioritizing people absolutely cannot be underestimated in any context, whether that be in the workforce, your social relationships, your family relationships, your community relationships, right? It's a relevant topic for every aspect, of your being, really.
Yeah, and I love that. It's a shame that Leo isn't here, of course, because blind spots, everybody, is obviously a huge part of Leo's walk in life with peer power and all of that good stuff. And I love what you just said, Jason, that, this whole leadership, communication, culture aspect of prioritizing people has so many deep, sort of dark corners to it that if you're not careful, you as a leader can think and feel that you're doing a pretty good job, but just not be conscious of some blind spots that you have. And obviously that's the power of peers, that if you surround yourself with diverse peers, each shining a light from their direction, then there's no blind spot left. There's no shadow left. And you can become fully aware and fully conscious of some room for improvement. And
that's the largest room in the world, by the way, Mike.
Yeah.
I don't know if you knew that. The largest room in the world is the room for improvement.
Excellent. I need to book that room next time I'm in a hotel. Excellent. And I forgot to close the door again, so video watchers are seeing the cat milling around. There's something I wanted to put on the table today, Jason, actually came out of a conversation I was lucky enough to have on Friday that you were aware of, that I, over the years, have been developing a relationship with Alan Mulally, who was the former CEO of Ford, and before that, the CEO of Boeing Commercial Airplanes, and before that, a program director of the 777, and all the way back to when he graduated college, he joined Boeing as an engineer, and so wow, what a career he had. And then he went over to Ford and turned that around, and then he joined the board of Google, or rather Alphabet. And of course, he gave us a front cover testimonial, everybody, for our brand new ebook called The One Advantage, that you can find out there on Amazon as a Kindle. And so go check that out. We'll put the link in the show notes for that, our brand new ebook. And we wrote a chapter in the book about Alan Mulally and what he did at Ford and before that at Boeing. And he reviewed it for us and sort of signed off on it. And anyway, I had a follow-up call with him on Friday, a Zoom call for an hour, which was just fabulous. And the conversation evolved towards, what we've begun to talk about, which is the emergence of artificial intelligence. Will not diminish the importance of human intelligence. It will only enhance the importance of human intelligence, plus collective intelligence equals collective intelligence. And so we were talking about all of that and sort of looking at Alan Mulally's case study at Ford through that new lens and casting a new light onto what he did. And he was very excited about that conversation. And he just couldn't say enough, Jason, his deep-seated belief that the uprising of artificial intelligence will only require a new uprising of human intelligence to keep up with it. So everything that we're talking about here, everybody, the power of prioritizing people, is about the leadership, the communication, the culture, the authenticity, everything else we touched upon. Is how are you going to take that game to an all new level? Because you taking your human intelligence to the next level to keep up with where artificial intelligence is going to go, it will only become more crucial, not less. What would you add to all of that, Jason?
Well, I think a key element of that, Mike, is recognizing the hidden assets of all the people around you. Right. And we do an awful lot of work in leadership development and that type of thing around team development, collaboration, team performance. And a big part of that is recognizing and identifying all the hidden assets that the people around you bring that you're unaware of. And that is a very, very deliberate action to identify what those hidden assets are. And once you do that, you will realize that everybody in your life has an inherent value and worth as individuals and contributors and what they're bringing to the table. And so, I mean, I really believe, kind of in alignment with what you're talking about, the power of prioritizing people. A good starting point for any leaders is to really look at their organization and identify all those hidden assets amongst your people that you don't realize that you have. That's the difference between championship winning coaches and playoff coaches, right? Playoff coaches get to the playoffs with the talent they have. Championship coaches tap into the hidden assets and values that their players bring to take them over the hump to win championships. And every leader should have that type of mindset when it comes to prioritizing people and identifying what those are.
Yeah, this team that I was just with up in Seattle, they had me come up and do, my agility stuff for an hour and a half and sort of really frame up for them, what is agile leadership, and how do you sort of layer on agile approaches to the sort of timeless fundamentals of leadership that you have been working with for so many years. And of course, in your last book, you took that to the next level with the concept of adaptive leadership. And it was interesting in that after I'd done my thing and it all went really well and they gave me great feedback and all of that, my flight was like mid-afternoon. So I said, hey, can I hang around and spend the rest of the morning with you? And oh yeah, great. And next up was their head of learning and development, who was doing a workshop around coaching. Mm-hmm. And they're a very sales intensive organization. So, the majority of that conversation was about how do you coach sales producer people. They have call centers and all that kind of stuff. It's a very noble business, by the way. They're in the field of staffing in the healthcare industry.
Got it.
And so it's a very noble business. They're really matchmaking between, where there is unmet demand for the need for nurses and things, and they can supply. And they were telling story after story after story of where they had used a new sort of coaching process and model and framework that they've been trained on to start coaching some individuals who initially were resolute that they couldn't improve. It was impossible to work harder. It was impossible to work smarter. This just isn't going to work, but I guess I'll go along, I'll go through the motions with you. And then lo and behold, 3, 5, 6 weeks later, these individuals have transformed from the lowest performing people on the team to the highest performing people on the team. And now they've become huge advocates of the coaching program itself. And all because the leaders sort of were committed to finding those hidden assets and inviting them to reveal themselves and become known. One of my friends up in Orange County, which you visit more frequently these days, I think his phrase is unwrapped gifts. Everybody has unwrapped gifts. Or rather, sorry, everybody has gifts that are still wrapped up. How do you unwrap the gifts? How do you find those hidden assets? So I love what you're saying. And I just experienced it over the last day or two with that team up in Seattle.
Yeah, I had a similar conversation a couple of weeks ago. I did a sales workshop, and it was a virtual workshop, and there was 130 real estate agents that participated, and we related this time the same topic to the marketplace in today in regards to listing a house or buying a house, really taking the time to really understand who your customers are, who your buyers are, who your listers are, and really unwrapping their needs, their desires, that type of stuff. And it's in alignment with what we're talking about from a sales organization. Again, prioritizing the power of prioritizing your customers, right? Your prospects, in a sales arena. It's no different than leadership with an internal team, taking that interest in them. And people ask me all the time, well, what's that ultimately really do? Well, think about it. I mean, if you're really prioritizing people and really demonstrating that you're showing that you appreciate the value they're bringing, I mean, that deepens connections with them. It raises the level of trust you have with your employees and your workforce. It shows your emotional intelligence and appreciation of their emotions and their being. So all of these things could bubble up into strengthening relationships, but the stronger that relationship is and the deeper interconnection you have with your employees, the stronger your team's going to be.
Yeah. And so this is the opportunity, everybody that's listening to this, no matter what walk of life or sector of industry or kind of business you're in, no matter what role you have, everybody's a leader in some way, shape, or form. At the very least, you lead yourself, but you probably, at the very least, lead your peers through influence. And again, we wish Leo was here today to double down on that. And quite likely, many of you run teams and lead teams and all of that. So this is the opportunity that's here for you, everybody, is to be ready for this next era, this next wave of evolution or revolution, more likely that we'll be going through real soon. And that is to hang on to this human intelligence track. No matter how fast the artificial intelligence track moves, there will always be this human intelligence track that runs right along beside it. And what can you do, everybody, to be moving down that track, up that learning curve, and going onwards and upwards towards mastery of leadership, of prioritizing your people with the communication and the culture and the core values. And, the thing that strikes me over the course of my career, Jason, your career, the last couple of days is actually, it's not that complicated, everybody. You can complicate the heck out of it for sure. But great leadership really isn't that complicated. I think Jason has begun to go there. Relentless curiosity. Well, how do you tap into relentless curiosity? Ask questions. Ask questions of your people. What do you want? What are your hopes and dreams? What's working well? What's not working well? What do you need to work on? How can I help you? What questions do you have for me? I mean, it's not that complicated, Jason, would you say?
It's not, Mike, and I'd like to kind of add to that a little bit. Everybody around you, regardless if it's in the workplace or outside the workplace, has an opinion. right? There's not a person in the world that does not have an opinion.
Not least of all, Jason, Leo,
we
and
have
I.
we have an inherent fear of sometimes knowing what that opinion is, right? And if we're not confident enough and willing enough to ask or allow people to share those opinions all the way across the board and be respectful of those opinions, we're going to have a difficult time prioritizing them as individuals or contributors in our world, right? So I learned this a long time ago as a child. Everybody has an opinion. You've got to have the mental mindset and the space and the openness to not only hear that opinion, but appreciate where that opinion comes from. And I think that's the starting point.
To be curious, as you said earlier, to have a relentless curiosity to, number one, want to hear that opinion. Number two, to let it sort of sink in and rattle around and to let it bring its full meaning and its full interpretation with it, to not discount parts of it, to not brush off any parts of it, to let it fully land. And for me, therefore, Jason, it's a leader's job really in many ways is to create the safety, the psychological safety, the conditions of psychological safety in which to be a container in which that can happen. And of course, again, that's the power of peers that Leo talks about so much, is how do you create the confidentiality? How do you create the psychological safety? How do you create the conditions to invite that degree of curiosity and transparency and trust? Frankly, everybody trust that I can speak up and I can put my perspectives on the table. And, you know, the way I've often characterized this to people, Jason, is, hey, everybody, when you walk into a room, what aura of leadership walks in with you? How does the air change in the room when you walk in? Does it change in a positive, exciting, expectant way when you walk into the room that, oh boy, we are about to have a really transparent, really trusting, really curious, revealing, transformative conversation in this meeting for the next hour?
Yep.
I know it's not going to be without some discomfort. I know it's not going to be without some, beads of sweat because we're working on really hard stuff. I know it's not going to be without some accountability, right? But man, I want to play on that team.
Yep.
Or when you walk into the room, everybody, does nothing change with the air and everybody's thinking, well, this is just going to be another meeting. I'll just try to get through this and then I can get back to my desk and get on with my job. Or even worse, of course, when you walk into a room, does the air change in a negative way because, oh, here we go again. We're going to be told what to do. And obviously, at the extremes, right? But I like to think about it that way, Jason. What aura of leadership walks into the room when you do, everybody? What would you say to that, Jason?
Well, I would say, first of all, you're taking kind of my thoughts out of my head about meetings and gatherings and discussions.
That's a whole separate podcast right there.
But because we've all been in those meetings. We've all been in those meetings where they get out. And then there's a whole bunch of follow-up sub-meetings where people are sharing their opinions or their ideas or comments or remarks that never came up in this safe space. So I think this aura of leadership, this air of a meeting has to be built around optimism, right? Forward thinking, innovation, collaboration, growth.
Yeah.
That's the type of aura. That's the type of aura you want in those meetings, and you want to eliminate, the aftershock, the after meetings, the people that want to participate afterwards. And that again, you're not truly tapping into their priority if that's going on in your organization.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So this is such a deep, broad, rich conversation, everybody. It is the quest of a career, isn't it, Jason? That and you and I are still enjoying that journey. You never reach the destination, everybody. This is always, you climb one mountain, you stand at the peak, you turn around, and there's a bigger mountain behind it, and you turn around, there's a bigger mountain behind it. You never arrive. And even that, when I was talking to Alan Mulally on Friday last week, I mean, he's just such a humble person. And by the way, he talks about, extremes of culture to the point where he uses the word love. And, can you get to a place where, the executives love working together? The team loves working for the executives and the CEO and in the culture and the company, and they love the mission and the vision and the purpose and the passion, and they just love it, and they talk about it forever. And I remember, when was it that Jim Collins published the book Good to Great? When was that? I think it was like 2010 or something like that. Maybe it was 2001, I think it was. And he talked about love in the book Good to Great. What are your thoughts on love as an element of culture, Jason?
Well, I think I think it's a key component to strive to, right? And I think it does. I kind of relate that to single as a purpose or your reason to get up every day, right? Right. You have to have that passion and that emotion for what you do. And that's a cultural aspect. That's a leadership aspect, creating that environment. So your people are getting up every day and they're excited about going to work, not or joining the team or participating or providing value versus having to. And that's kind of my take on that, Mike. I think it's great.
And when you ask someone at a cocktail party or over the lunch table, or perhaps even in a one-to-one coaching session, when you're curious enough to just throw out that open-ended question like real leaders should, which is, so how's this working for you? How's this going? How is this for you so far? And in an unprompted way, when they tell you, I love it, then you know that you are onto something and that you probably are doing pretty well in leveraging the power of prioritizing people. You probably don't have too many blind spots around you that are not serving you well. You're probably starting to crack the code, and you've got a great aura, that when you walk in the room, walks in with you. And then you just keep going and you keep going and keep going, because the goalposts are always moving, everybody. The goalposts are always changing. There's always the next, thing coming up over the edge of the radar scope that you're going to sweat bullets about, like artificial intelligence, for instance, right now. Those things are going to challenge your leadership to the next level. There's always a next level to go to, always a next mountain to climb. Mm-hmm. But if you stick with that journey relentlessly, Jason, then it's like, what else is there to do, right? Except stay with that journey of leadership development and culture development, just relentlessly, insatiably. What would you say?
I'd say just keep practicing, Mike. The one advantage is a practice, right? Every leadership role out there, it's a practice, and you've got to continually go practice every day.
Yeah, indeed. Agile, everybody. I just got done, didn't I, up in Seattle doing my little agile thing. And agile is about really running a fast series of experiments. And doing the ones that work, do more of those, and the ones that don't, do less of those. And so practice, that's what practice is, right? Practice is, hey, take something out for a spin, try something different, push the envelope, go to the next level. Yeah, you'll stub your toe once in a while, and you just quietly let that go and try something else. And that's how you stick your head up into a whole new arena and push on through to the next level. Final thoughts, Jason, for everybody before we wrap it up here?
I would say do not underestimate the power that your people bring on a daily basis. And it's your role as a leader in your organization. It is your responsibility to take those steps to uncover hidden assets and to identify, the value and appreciate that value that the people in your lives are bringing to you every day.
Yeah, awesome, everybody. There you have it. Another episode done here. The power of prioritizing people. We'll hope to have Leo back with us next time. And we'll see you and hear you, or you us, in the next One Advantage podcast.
Thanks for listening to the One Advantage podcast. If you liked this episode, please consider helping us by rating us wherever you listen, spreading the word, having us as a guest on your podcast or webinar, and mentioning us in social media. Find us at the One Advantage podcast, where you can get more information about us and this episode. Thanks again for listening, and we look forward to more great episodes to come.